Just a word to our Prime Minister.
And the king, they deemed that there was someone with a digestive tract problem.
If you don't want to heed to the word of God, you might have a friend come into Ottawa and knock on your door.
I blow the wind of God.
The wind of God.
On you.
I'm just getting into a prophetic vein. Mama moko solo lo basata. Manda da basata. I don't make this stuff up.
I know we shouldn't have to scream that we're atheists. You know, we don't have non-astrologers and all that.
Not waiting for them to bring God back to Parliament. We'll do it.
Proud to be an atheist, a skeptic, a non-believer, an infidel, a heathen. I call it how I see it. I say it's ignorance and you just call it faith and unsubstantiated claims. That's something to be ashamed. I'm an atheist.
Coming at you from both West and BC and Florida, this is Left on LA 2.0. My name is Kevin, and apparently I'm told I'm addicted to brake fluid. But worry not, I can stop anytime. Joining me as usual is a team that stayed up all night wondering where the sun went. Then it dawned on them.
Oh,
guys, welcome back. And this show is brought to you by patreon.com/ sorry, my other patrons. Go to patreon.com/LATV, and you too can help Dawn get help for a motorcycle addiction by sending her for a ride. Guys, welcome back. Hope you had a great week.
oh yeah.
Always. Yeah, it's my birthday today, so I'm in a very good mood.
I was just supposed to say happy zombie Jesus Day and happy birthday.
I'm pretending, since it's Easter too, that everybody's celebrating by like having ham and going on Easter egg hunts to celebrate a blood sacrifice in my honor.
You just jumped the gun. I was about to play the whole music thing. There we go. See, happy birthday, happy birthday. I should just turn 23.
Yes,
the same year this music was made, yeah.
Yes, about that.
All right.
Thank you, by the way.
Edwin Hodge in the second half of the show. We'll be talking about incels again. But first, let's do our usual chit-chat. All right, let's put this all to pause. Okay, perfect. In the news, in trying to be the worst news, you guys heard that Tennessee had a school shooting recently, right, at a Christian school. Some people were hurt and some people died. Sorry?
The one that conservatives radio.
It's hard to keep track of the school shootings in the States.
I know, right? It's becoming a plague in the States. It's absolutely amazing.
I'll be honest. I don't know how people can tolerate it, but it's a cultural difference.
Yeah, there absolutely is at that point. Well, the school shooting, of course, reignited the old debate on guns, right? And while protesters were gathering near the state legislature in Tennessee, they were joined by 3 Democrat members of that state legislature. And in an extraordinary act of political retaliation, Tennessee Republicans on Thursday expelled 2 of the Democratic lawmakers from the state legislature for their role in the protests that called for more gun control in the aftermath of a deadly school shooting in Nashville. A 3rd Democrat was narrowly spared by a 1-vote margin. So banishment is usually a move the chamber has used a handful of times since the Civil War. Most state legislatures possess the power to expel members, but it's generally reserved for punishment for lawmakers accused of serious misconduct, and it's not used as a weapon against political opponents. So members Jones, Pearson, and Johnson joined in protesting last week as hundreds of protesters packed the Capitol to call for passage of gun control measures. So these demonstrators were protesting the state legislatures said they wanted something done on the gun front. And while demonstrators filled the galleries, the 3 Democrats approached the front of the House chamber with a bullhorn and participated in the chant. So they actually joined the protest and chanted too. The trio held hands as they walked to the House floor, and Pearson raised his fist to the crowd during the Pledge of Allegiance. Offered a chance to defend himself before the vote, Jones said the Republicans' response to the shooting with a different kind of attack. Quote, "We call on you all to ban assault weapons, and you respond with an assault on democracy." That's pretty nasty, man. You're joining your fellow people in protesting, and you're being expelled as a member of, not parliament, but of the state legislature.
I was listening to the one guy's speech, and he's like listing some of the stuff that's happening from like other Congress or other people in the local setting. He's talking about like one guy actually peed on another member's seat, and that didn't get him expelled. But
well, yeah, it's like you're kind of missing the point here, right? I mean, it's almost like, okay, so if you're inciting a riot like on January 6th, that apparently doesn't do anything. That doesn't get you expelled for any legislative body. But if you protest with the people, that somehow does. It's like, what the hell's wrong with these people?
Yeah. Well, afterwards, they asked the lady who just barely didn't get just barely passed or whatever by that you were saying. They asked her, why do you think you didn't get expelled? And she said, it probably has something to do with the color of my skin.
She's white, and the other two that get expelled are black. Exactly.
Oh, of course. Yep.
That's really bad, man. Even President Biden chimed in at some point, and he said, quote, 3 kids and 3 officials were gunned down in yet another mass shooting, and the GOP officials are focusing on punishing lawmakers who joined thousands of peaceful protesters calling for action. It's shocking, undemocratic, and without precedent. And he's right. He's absolutely right.
Yeah, and the protesters, they had such a powerful chant. Like they're chanting, "You ban books, you ban drag," but children are still in body bags, or kids are still in body bags. Yeah. And like, how true is that? It's like, you have all this outrage about like penguins with 2 dads, all this outrage about someone wearing lipstick, and then it's meanwhile it's like you got kids dying daily. Like the largest killer of children in the U.S. is guns. Yeah, and it's and there's just nobody wants to regulate it, and it's funny because like up in Canada, like I remember back in high school, like there was police officers peeved off about the gun control coming in, saying that they weren't going to. Like I had police friends who said that they weren't going to enforce the law, that they were going to be hoarding their own guns. But after we brought in the regulation, within like 10 years, like all the hunting accidents dropped right off, crime dropped down, and like all the people that were protesting realized, like, oh crap, no, these laws are actually making our life better, not worse. It's
the same thing for everything. So it's also when the legislated that gay weddings were allowed in Canada. Oh, it's going to rain cats and dogs. No, it's been for over 20 years now, and apocalypse hasn't happened. It's like,
the closest is like that song "It's Raining Men" on repeat. Or whatever. Hallelujah.
But the funny thing is, if you caught one of Brently's favorite people he likes to mock, Charlie Kirk, actually had a bit of a moment where he said out loud what he wasn't supposed to say out loud, and he basically said, we get a lot of people that get killed, but he says that's the price of having our Second Amendment right, and he's willing to pay it. And I thought, wow, that's a stunning admission right there. Like, you're willing to have thousands of people die every year, and a lot of them kids, just so you can play Rambo, and you're willing to pay that. It's like,
There was a TikTok video that just went viral of like the survivor buckets that there are in classrooms with the supplies in case they're trapped in the school, and there's blankets in there. So like if teachers have to cover bodies, there's things in there for food, water supplies, things like that if they are trapped. And it is depressing and sad, and it's just heartbreaking because I'm like, this should not exist. Like this didn't exist when I was growing up. Columbine was like the first shooting other than the other one that happened in the 70s, but they were rare. Now they haven't. There was like between the past shooting and the beginning of the year, there was 28 school shootings in the United States.
Jesus.
28 in 3
months.
months.
Good school shootings. We're not talking about mass shootings. Or just
school shootings. School shootings.
Yeah, when I worked with the school board, I was in maintenance and whatnot, and I always had to like explain to the teacher, because they would come to me and be like, "Can you get this empty weird bucket that's full of like toilet paper and stuff out of here?" And I always have to be like, "No." And they're like, "Why? What is it?" And it's like, for school shootings. Like, if you guys are in here for so long, you got to have some place to go, because there isn't bathrooms in every classroom, and you could be stuck in here for hours. And just the look on their faces, just always like, "What?" Like, you should know this. Like,
what blows my mind
the normal thing to happen.
What blows my mind is I'll be on like right wing social media, and they'll be posting these pictures of these fully armed, like mercenary type guys, whatever, guarding their kids' school, and they're bragging about how safe they feel. And it's like, how do you think this affects your children to be going to school with freaking mercenaries at the front door with with AK-47s? It's like,
well, when the last big one happened was they were talking about like we should train teachers to become shooters. I mean, people didn't go into the teaching profession, which is massively underfunded, and now take up the ability like, oh, I'm going to become like, you know, a gun owner and I got to protect children, which most people, even if they're trained to shoot another human being, it's extremely, extremely traumatizing. And it just like, I get so mad because over and over again, like there was this 8-year-old that confused a drill and thought that really there was a school shooting going on in school. They didn't inform the parents, and he got traumatized, was acting out, and then they found out later that they did a school shooting drill, and he's 8, can't differentiate between what is fake and real. And it's just, I don't know, like we're doing such a massive disservice to kids in the United States, and I'm just heartbroken and frustrated, and I'm just like, I don't understand why this is so fucking difficult to do. Just normal gun control, just more regulations would help.
Yeah, you don't have to take the guns away. You just got to make sure the crazy people don't have the guns.
And we have to, like,
you don't
doesn't mean an AR-47. I'm sorry, you do not.
There's no reason for that.
You know what? Some people like to recreationally shoot, though. So it's so like if you have an AK-47, fine, you're a recreational shooter. But like if you want a gun like that in Canada, you're going to have special licensing. And there's going to be special restrictions on how you store your weapon, how you transport it, to make sure that it's like you treat the responsibility of having a gun like that with the most respect possible. I don't see that in American culture. It just seems like if you you can grab your 6-pack of beer, drive down to the gun store or gun show, and pick up a gun, and you're on your way.
Oh, it's insane. I remember going to the States on business, and I stop and there's this arena, this little town, this very little town, right? It was called Sidro Woolley in Washington State, and I'm thinking, what's all these cars there? There's a show going on, so I just walked in, and there's this massive gun show, and you get tables of stuff you could just pick up and holsters and crap. And this is a very small town. And God damn it, this was like really eye opening for me. It's like Jesus.
I've been to a couple of gun shows down here, and it is crazy because I don't know. Me and Todd were like, just because Todd is he likes guns and he's grew up with them and he likes to shoot and stuff like that. We haven't done it in years, but he's like, let's go to the gun show, see what they have. And it made me so uncomfortable because people were acting like these things were like the best fucking thing ever invented, and it was very culty. And for someone that I'm like, okay, like guns can be cool. I'm like I'll go to the shooting range, like I haven't yet, but I'm not against it or anything. I'm just like, fine, like that seems like a cool hobby. But like they fetishize it, and that's why I'm like, ooh,
because I was gonna say, like, you got. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, when I grew up, people usually only had like 3 or 4 guns. You had your shotgun, you had your rifle, you had something for small game, and then you had a specialty gun for whatever your interest is in or whatever. Nowadays, people collect guns like they do tattoos.
There are more guns. There are more guns than citizens of the United States in the country right now.
Yeah,
more guns.
Well, and the crazy thing too is that a lot of these people that they do get to like be the protected, the protector people for the schools and stuff, most of them that they get are these gun nuts. Like they are people that are out of that group, right? And most of those people aren't the most well-adjusted people. Let me just say that. Yeah. So if you got the guy that's supposed to protect everybody, what if he has a fucking mental breakdown? Yeah. So what? Now you got the guy that's allowed to have a gun in the school, having a mental break. It's just it doesn't work. So more guns is not the answer.
I have friends that are former military, and they even say like, these people are very rare. They former military, or they didn't see any combat. Like it's stuff like that, and and they have like this hero complex. Like
the scramble thing.
Yeah, it's like, well, I'm gonna be a big strong man. I'm gonna protect the kids. Blah blah blah. Nobody's gonna take my gun. Blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, dude. I'm like, slow your fucking roll. Like I'm like, stop playing soldier. You're not 8 years old anymore. You're a 40-year-old man.
Get some action figures. Like,
get some GI Joe. All right.
Yeah, that's fine. Like,
it's kind of interesting that we all grew up with fire drills. And we look at some of the old footage from the 50s and 60s where they had like nuclear bomb drills, and we look at that today. Wow, what an insane time!
My husband remembers doing those drills.
Yeah, so you think 40, 50 years from now they're going to be looking at gun drills in U.S. schools, and they're going to say, "Wow, what an insane thing that's happening there." So, food for thought. All right, moving on, because we could be doing this all.
Yeah, this is a long time.
And I'm depressed now. I want to move on from this story. I'm sad.
Good news. Let's go.
I've got different news. In chocolate news, do you ever wonder why Easter, which is today, falls on a different date every year? You ever wonder that?
Because it has to be on Sunday.
Well, I know, but go ahead.
but tell us, Kevin, why does Easter fall on a different day every year?
Unlike Christmas, which is always on the 25th, Easter curiously falls on a different date each year. While Easter is always on a Sunday, it can always sometimes spring up in March, and next year it's in late April. And this year, Easter is today, April 9th, right, for Western Christian. While in 2024, it's going to be March 31st, and Easter 2025 is going to be April 20th. So what's the reason for that? Well, Easter's timing is based on the lunar calendar as opposed to the solar calendar. It also has something to do with the holiday must happen on a certain days of the week. For example, of course, you get Good Friday, Holy Saturday, and Easter Sunday, or Easter Monday. So what's the lunar calendar, if you never wondered? Under the solar calendar, which is what we usually use for everyday life, one day is measured by one rotation of the sun by Earth, with the equivalent of 365.2422 days. But the lunar calendar is based on the monthly cycle of the moon's phases. A lunar month is 29.5 days, and a total year is 354 days and a handful of hours, which is, of course, a lot shorter than the usual 365. So the date for Easter for Western Christian, as opposed to Eastern Orthodox Christian, occurs on the first Sunday following the first full moon after the northern spring equinox. So, since the equinox occurred March 20th this year, the following first pink moon or full moon will rose on April 6th, 2023, and the date of Easter Sunday, the first one after that, was today, April 9th. And this is how it happens to be. This is how they pick Easter every year.
Huh.
So you might be wondering, why does Easter follow the lunar calendar? Easter is the Christian holiday that celebrates the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We all know that, as tradition occur. The prophet was crucified, Good Friday. They put him in the tomb Saturday, and Sunday he was gone, right? So they say. Of course, the shifting of the occurs on Sunday because it's important. It has to be on a Sunday. But the reason why it follows the lunar calendar is, unlike the other Christian holidays, it's a little less obvious. But apparently it has likely something to do with Easter's roots in Passover, which is a Jewish holiday that commemorates the liberation of the Jewish people from slavery to Egypt. Since the Hebrew calendar is based on the lunar cycles, Easter apparently also follows that trend. So now you know.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
The lunar calendar is also why we have 7-day weeks, because the lunar cycle is like 28 point some day, 27.2 or 27.3 days. Round that down to 28, divide by 4, and you got 7.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a quarter moon, half moon, 3/4. It's roughly about 7 days each time. So it's lunar calendars are kind of neat because they influence our daily life a lot more than we realize.
And it's an ancient tradition. Perfect. And now that we've learned all this,
fast forward from ancient Mesopotamia, and
I'm not going to go into the pagan explanations of Easter too. I'm just going to skip that because we only have so much to do for this show.
Top 10.
It's your show, Helen. You go ahead.
Okay, so since it's my birthday, and I remember when I was a little youngling. Because I'm a Helen. That's how people used to make fun of my name when I was little. Like I'd be like Helen Mellon. Now my name's House Bells, but when you're 7 in a Catholic school and someone's calling you that, it was insulting. So I was thinking about this. I was thinking about my childhood trauma about my name. So I decided to do the top 10 worst names of all time. Because then it made me feel better that my name wasn't so bad.
I'm trying to remember who it was. Some kid, I think it was in Britain, sued her parents to change her name because they gave her some sort of. I think her name was something like Hila the Hula does the hula in Hawaii or something like that. Or some really weird.
You should be allowed to sue your parents if you have that.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's not on this list, but there was this couple. It came out. So you know how they put on the bassinets in the nurseries that they put like male and female name. Okay. Mm-hmm. Somebody came in and I thought this was an urban legend for a joke, but it's a real thing that happened. Come in and they go, "Oh, well, you're gonna name your baby." "Oh, you already named it for us." And they're like, "What?" Famali.
Famali?
Famali?
Put it together. Spell it.
Famali.
Female. Female-y. Yeah. So there's family for short.
You always have a permit to reproduce, man.
Yeah. So yeah. So anyway, so our first name is Gaylord.
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate.
And
there was parents with the last name Fokker.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
But there was a 1984 Olympics gymnast named Mitch Gaylord, and I am guessing that they replaced that M with a B, bitch Gaylord, all during his childhood. Yeah, so.
That's not even clever. That's mean. I mean, that's
just mean.
Clever.
Yeah.
Come on, what the hell? There's so much shit you could do with that. That's okay.
Gaylord is one of those names you get.
Not gonna give him ideas.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, this one's very obvious. Adolf.
Yeah.
It used to be popular, but you know.
Yeah, and after that, now now if like there was that couple a few years ago that named their child Adolf and had like a Nazi birthday party for him and got some backlash. Yeah, I wonder why. I mean, like your Nazis, neo-Nazis, and you name your kid Adolf.
I'm pretty sure that name,
why he's having issues at school.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the name went out of style the same time the square mustaches did.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Charlie Chaplin, it's hard to do that costume anymore.
Yeah. Oh. So this is actually my brother's name is it's Dick. Well, because he's a Richard, but we call him Dickie, and he hated it. Like he said, he goes.
My neighbor was nicknamed Dick. His last name was Bent, though.
Dick,
I don't know why his parents named him Richard.
Somebody's gonna have to explain to me how did you go from how did we as a society
I don't
go from
know
Richard to Dick?
I don't know how that happened.
I don't know.
Richard to Rich, I get it. Even
Ricky,
Richard to Howard or something. I get it,
but Dick, that just doesn't.
Yeah, my brother said that growing up that it was really hard. Like he grew up in the 60s and 70s, and he was born in 67. So, and he said that like going to high school and stuff, and he was a kid, it was awful. Like he hated his name growing up. Like we call him Dickie. If I call him Richard, it's just weird because we're 46 years now. I've been calling him Dickie, but he said it was terrible. So I totally understand. So apparently, I don't know who named their child this, but apparently this is real. They named their child version 2.0.
Oh God!
What's that?
Here,
Elon
Versi.
I don't know who this was. This is on the top 10s list that I found that I usually get my top 10s from. But I'm like, who? Why?
Yeah. Slap you around with that name too while your head is like that's almost child abuse at that point.
That's
yeah.
But you're not even naming Isn't it kind of dehumanizing? Because usually we use that for like upbooting our computers or like like when we're upgrading. So, it's just.
So what was your mom name? OG? Was that it?
OG.
Yeah,
there could
classic.
be a story behind it. Though. Like when we had that like really bad storm back here in the 90s, there was a car stranded on the highway, and they ended up having to give birth on the way to the hospital. So they ended up naming the girl Blazer because they were driving a Chevy Blazer. So it's like maybe there's a story behind it.
Blazer.
Okay.
Oh my God.
I mean, like usually, like we have a joke in my family that you name your car and we usually it's either me like the brand you have or whatever the car's name is. So, but like I don't imagine doing the opposite. Like, I mean, my baby, it's just like Mitsubishi. Like, I mean, to be fair, like Mercedes was a girl's name.
It was. Yeah. So the guy names his car Betty, but then his kid Blazers.
All wrong.
So I did not. So I guess Alexis is a bad name. It's because it's Alex.
Also born in Alexis. No.
Also born in Alexis because it's Alex modified. And it's Alex adding an IS, which it makes it Alex is.
Oh, okay.
I don't know how. And also too, I do know that I was going to name my oldest as Alexis, and my brother said, "Have you seen Dallas?" So at the time, there was like, people that grew up with that TV show. She was the worst character, and that name became associated with bitches.
Oh, the Karen of that time.
Yeah, the Karen of the 80s.
I think that's the worst. When you start naming your kid after your favorite sitcom, you remember like what was that show that was super popular in the 90s? Beverly Hills 90210 or something like that.
Oh yeah.
And every boy was named Jason or whatever.
Brandon.
Whatever.
Brandon.
Yeah.
And there's Brandon, Dylan.
Yeah.
And Steve. And
supposedly,
I used to watch that show religiously when I was in high school.
Supposedly, I'm named after Troy Donahue is who I'm named after. And I have no idea who Troy Donahue is. I think he was an actor or a talk show guy back in the 70s.
He could have been named after Helen or Troy. That would be worse.
That's a pick. Well, to be
we
fair,
got both them on this show.
Men have used that on me as a pickup line when I say my name, and they're like, "Oh, the face of launched 1,000 ships." I'm like, "Yes," and I heard it over and over and over again when someone's trying to pick me up, and I'm like, "You are not creative, man. I'm sorry."
Get that a lot.
Got that a lot. Yeah, it was. Because it's too easy. Number 6
against you.
Number 6 is Pubert.
Pubert.
Yeah.
Puberty?
Yeah.
Pubert T. Barnes.
Pubert. Pubert.
If he's a MAGA, if this Pubert is a MAGA guy, does he become Pubert?
I
got a very low
want to
voice,
know, do you want your children to be traumatized?
No.
Is this what you want?
It's a family
I
day.
think it's just parents forgetting what grade 9 was like. It's because
why
would you give other kids that much ammunition?
Right. Don't do that.
Jeez.
Number 7 is Porky.
Oh God.
That's not a real what?
That's a real name.
Real?
Oh.
It's real.
I had that name for a while when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I don't people don't give children are assholes. Don't give them ammunition because they're terrible. Don't do that.
This is my son Porky and his sister Lamb Chop.
This is Hefty.
We're keto people. We were on the keto diet there.
I'm just trying to figure out some sort of Porky's Revenge joke to fit into here, but nobody remembers that movie anymore anyway. So
it didn't age well. Okay, it didn't age well.
It has not aged well. I think I saw it when I was 13, 14 years old, and I have some vague way back in the back of my brain of some scenes and stuff, and but I remember those scenes as an adult, and I'm like, oh, that would not, no, that's not good. That's not good.
I love the movies back then.
Animal House or Revenge of the Nerds. It's just
it would not fight it.
Yeah, not funny anymore. Number 9 is Kaka.
No,
Kaka.
Come on, really?
That's a slang, not a name.
Yeah.
That means
a Brazilian star car driver named Kaka Bueno finished 3rd in the recent season. His name means poop good or poop well.
It's got a good digestive.
It was a quick labor win.
I'm like, God. like, I'm
the
like,
baby
maybe they
came
don't
out so
understand the
fast, it was
context.
either going to call it Poop Well or Blazer. So-
We went with the poop one. I don't know.
Caca Porky.
Well, because people might mock her if you call Blazer.
I want to give him some bit of a chance, so Kaka, that's what we're going with.
So, the number 10 is Olga, but the reason why this is a bad name is that people will make it into ogre, and they will make fun of children with that name. So, little girls especially. So,
because what wasn't there? Hold on, there was like a comic strip about Viking people.
Yeah, Hagar, horrible.
Hagar wasn't his wife or something? Olga, yeah.
Or was it Helga?
Oh, it could be.
I don't know. I'm sure there's been some comic book figure named Olga.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Probably a
And they're an
Viking.
ogre,
And she's probably one of those like domineering female archetypes.
Yeah.
You know, with dealing with the bumbling husband. Like that I can see it. I can see it. So that is my top 10 to you. Please do not name any of your children these names. Otherwise, they're going to be traumatized and they won't love you anymore.
Well, you forgot. And
honorable mention, Moonchild. Honorable mention.
Moonchild.
Moonchild. Yeah.
Oh. You forgot the worst one. It's Brent. That should be your number one worst name. Sounds like an industrial fucking sponge.
You know, it's kind of funny because my daughter, when she was born, the first name I wanted to pick for her was Ashley. I really like the name Ashley, right? But being French, Ashley sounds too much like haché, which is the word you would use as in ground beef, steak haché, right?
Oh, okay.
I can't name her this because, is it going to mock her?
It's a ground beef lady.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it's actually because my name being Kevin, being raised in a French line, Kevin was very, very unusual for the longest time.
Kevin is very. I haven't met many French people named Kevin.
No, exactly. Right?
All my family's like,
he called me anything but Kevin. He was like Gavin, Galvin, Calvin, Carol. It's like anything but Kevin. They just could not do it for the longest time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of Jacques and Miguel and all this like for like my name is Helene and like my mom said Helene because she's French and that's how they differentiated and I'm a Helen.
Yeah, you put an E at the end, Helen.
Yeah, just put the E on the end. And Spanish is Helena. It sounds sexy if you put the A there. Anyway, so that is my top 10 for the week. Enjoy. Do not name your kids these things. That is my advice for the week.
All right, Troy. Let's see some truth, lies, or myth here, buddy.
Alrighty, Easter Island. Since it's Easter, I figured it's like let's do an Easter Island theme.
Apropos.
Also known as Rapa Nui, it is one of the most remote inhabited island in the world. It's part of the country of Chile, and it's infested with giant stone heads known as moai.
They belong to. I didn't know they belonged to Chile. Really?
Yeah, that was new to me too. I thought it was just like a island out in the middle of nowhere. But
I knew it had to belong to one country somewhere, but I didn't know it was Chile. So that's interesting.
But either way, so our first question is multiple choice. Why do they call it Easter Island? A, when Europeans arrived, natives gifted them eggs in what coincidentally looked like Easter baskets. B, Rapa Nui roughly translates to rising god, and Europeans figured Easter Island sounded better. C, the island was discovered on Easter. Or D, the island was once covered in flowers and trees and large rabbits were everywhere, and the Dutch figured this must be where the Easter Bunny lives.
I would say
the Easter Bunny thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, we can't all answer at the same time, guys. Like, we got it.
Okay.
Sorry. Brent, what is your answer, Brent?
The Easter Bunny thing, of course. What?
I think that would be awesome. That was in a movie, like the movie Hop. That's where the Easter Bunny lives.
That's brilliant.
That's awesome. I didn't see that movie. That's
a documentary, right?
Yeah, forget April Valley. It's a volcanic. But no, it is C. Easter Island was first discovered by a Dutch explorer, Jacob Roggeveen, on Easter Sunday, 1722, while searching for Terra Australis Incognita, or undiscovered southern land. Apparently, they used to think there was this giant continent that went all along the bottom of the map and connected with Australia, which ended up being Antarctica. But Antarctica is a lot smaller than what they thought it was going to be. But either way,
Antarctica connects to Australia.
Well, no, really close. This is what they used to think.
Okay.
This was a myth, right? Like they figured there must be, right?
It's like that doesn't sound right. But,
It
hey,
is
I
that
don't
the
know.
Earth is flat, Brent.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, my bad. That's right. The wall surrounds it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
So, Rogers or whatever his name is, reported the island to have several thousand inhabitants, palm forests, agriculture, and organized society. Nowadays, the island's mostly a desert, but Rapa Nui actually translates to "navel of the world."
Oh, nice.
Oh.
Which I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure why. It might have something to do with the old Polynesian myth that the life came out of a god's navel or something like that. But
okay.
What is a navel again? What's that? What is a navel?
It's your belly button, right?
Oh, okay. All right.
Belly button.
It's also where you get those big oranges, navel oranges.
That's how you know a person. By the way, that's how you know a person is an alien if they don't have a belly button.
That's right.
They're an alien.
You see a picture of Adam and Eve, a painting of Adam and Eve, and they have belly buttons.
Right. It's like, what?
It was connected to the dirt because they were made out of dirt. You know,
exactly.
Pumping in dirt nutrients.
So, truth, myth, or balderdash. When the Dutch arrived, they first when the Dutch arrived, they were first met by a tattooed-faced shaman, and islanders soon followed bearing gifts, welcoming them to the island. About 140 Dutch made landfall. The majority headed inland to a village, but they soon ran back to the beach after hearing gunfire. When they arrived, a dozen or so dead Rapa Nui people were found dead on the ground, and the excuse that was given, one of them touched me.
That sounds too much like truth.
Yeah.
It sounds too much like something that actually could have happened.
Yeah, it's more accurately, they claimed that someone pulled on their clothing, and then all the Dutch people, the Dutch guys with the guns, overreacted and just started opening fire, including killing the shaman that came out to meet them. So needless to say, first contact didn't go very well, and they left a few days later.
To be fair, that's on par with white people.
Yeah. Yeah, but that sounds bad. They killed many more islanders, some estimate as high as 3,000, just by all the germs that they left behind.
Yeah.
So it's that was like after the first contact, that's when their population started declining.
Caucasian, the plague rat of history.
Pretty much. The Rapa Nui themselves are of Polynesian descent. They most likely settled the island around 1200 CE. These are the same wayfinders that inhabited Hawaii and New Zealand, which is seen in a few vague, you can see a few vague similarities in their traditions and religious beliefs, but not much, because after they landed on the island, the Rapa Nui started developing their own culture, which included building these giant moai statues. So, the next question, multiple choice. These moai statues were constructed for what purpose? A, to act as monoliths honoring their ancestors, leaders, and celebrities. B, to fertilize and deliver magical mana to the land. C, to mark water sources and property rights. Or D, who knows, possibly all of them maybe.
D.
Yeah, I'm going with D too. Although I kind of like that mana thing. The mana thing, that's pretty part of their culture. So
yeah,
I'm
that's what I
going
was going to go with.
Yeah, it is D. I lost my spot. So yeah, there's no concrete proof for either of these, but there is evidence to suggest each one. Each moai has a different face, which with different markings showing individual significance. One misfit moai carved in a kneeling position was actually a singer, and he was carved out of red scotia. And not tough, which all the other moai are carved out of. So they're all carved out of different kinds of volcanic rock, but most of them are carved out of tough, except for 19 of them, including this one kneeling one of the singer, which was carved out of scotia. There was a quarry where the Rapa Nui carved these statues out of the volcanic rock, and they noticed the land became especially fertile as a result, because, of course, the volcanic ash was fertilizing the soil.
Yeah.
So this this confirmed their beliefs about the whole mana thing. So they would use. Some people believe that they figured that they put the statues around so that the volcanic ash would fertilize the help fertilize the area.
We'll kind of transport the magic from one magical site to another, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and as for markers, geological surveys and scanning show that all the statues are located only in fertile areas, and where the Rapa Nui people could most likely access springs from the island's aquifer, because the island has no lakes or rivers, so all the water came from the earth, or it leaked up from the earth. Next one up, truth, myth, or boulderdash. The heads on Easter Island are more than just heads. They are attached to even larger bodies, averaging 13 feet, but some are as large as 33 feet high. This is because it is said that when the Rapa Nui arrived, there were giants living on the island, and the Rapa Nui did not, and the Rapa Nui made these statues to honor them. So, truth, myth, or balderdash?
Yeah, definitely myth.
Yeah, it's balderdash. Yeah. Although it is true that there are bodies attached to the heads, and they do range in those sizes, the rumors of giants ever living there is just internet fantasy, and it's a. There's one myth that I heard where they were claiming that all the giants from Genesis, this is where they ended up living, is on Rapa Nui.
The Nephilim? The Nephilim?
Yeah,
the Nephilims or whatever, yeah. Paul just had the best theories.
The angels had sex with women, and then they made giants. What?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What? You're weird.
Poor women giving birth.
I'm not going to ask how that works, so I'm just...
Yeah.
As someone
I'm
that's
thinking
had
the
children,
angels.
I'm just...
Yeah, I'm thinking the angels should have sex with the boys, and then they can just name their kids Poop Goods. But it's
well, the angels, they don't have genitalia; they have like cloaca, like birds. So it's kind of a weird thing.
Oh, okay.
I thought they were massive eyeballs.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah, it's not the same.
So it just depends. I don't know how eyeballs, fuck, but.
That's their expression as screwing you with your eyes or whatever.
That's right, exactly.
That's something I
sexy eyes.
Yeah, I'm not ogling. It's angel sex.
It's angel sex.
Okay. Multiple choice. Since the Moai were carved in a quarry, how did the Rapa Nui move these giant statues averaging 12 tons each?
I know, but I'm not going to answer it because I've seen documentaries.
Okay. The shaman would use magic and a ritual to make the statues walk. They would use complex rail systems using trees. They assembled the statues in pieces. Or D, my favorite, aliens moved them with their spaceships. I've been watching History Channel.
Yeah.
Did the Moai get aliens to move the statues?
Considering that the report of the first reports on the island had plenty of agriculture and trees, and the tree now the island now is pretty much barren, I would think the rail system is probably the answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a good guess. And some people claim this. The only thing that they've been able to prove, though, is a while back is geologists or some scientists, whatever, they did this experiment where they made a life-size statue, and they had like 3 sets of ropes, and you have 2 people on the sides rocking the statue back and forth to get until they got it moving enough so they can make it walk forward. And they have the 3rd rope in behind to stabilize it.
Nice.
And yeah, if that's the doc that you watched, Helen or whatever, it's like you watch the video and it actually looks like this giant statue is kind of like walking like a Veggie Tale or something.
Yeah,
like that.
and that was one theory. And then they showed how they developed a similar system to how they moved like the blocks for the pyramids, using like logs to roll them. I watched another one too. That was another theory that they had, but it was both were presented in the documentary. I don't know. I think I watched.
Yeah,
I watched so many documentaries on so many different things.
I saw mention that where there's an actual folklore about how they would how the shaman would cast a spell to make them walk.
Yeah,
that seemed like the most plausible. But
exactly that. How else do you get giant stone to walk?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Magic, man.
Magic.
But they still had to like. But at the same time, they still had to like cut down sections of forest so that they could actually and create roads so that they could actually move the statues too, right? So it did help with the deforestation. So the island of Rapa Nui went through what is called an ecocide, something we're beginning to experience today. With the loss of all its trees, surface erosion, mudslides, and losing access to water supplies, this caused their once thriving culture to reduce drastically in numbers. So, which of the following was not a contributing factor to the continual decline and eradication of their culture? A. Infighting and wars due to decrease of food supplies and resources. B. Diseases brought to the islands by the Europeans. C. European raids reducing half the population or kidnapping half the population for slavery. Or D. A volcanic eruption in the late 1800s.
I don't think it was a volcanic eruption. So I think the answer is D.
Yeah, I should have made one more convincing. With it being the island itself was created by two volcanoes, so it's like I figure, that's close
enough.
Yeah,
but I saw you through your subterfuge, sir.
Yeah, but in spite of the deforestation, though, they were still able to plant. Just because volcanic ash, they kind of had an endless supply of fertilizer. But, okay, next up. Truth, myth, or balderdash? As their civilization crumbled and the people turned away from the Moai, as the whole blessing mana thing clearly wasn't working out for them, this resulted in the development of a Birdman cult, where the chief would be chosen once a year by an egg hunt. Truth, myth, or balderdash?
I think it's balderdash.
I'm going to balderdash.
Egg in the Easter Island thing.
That's true.
Yeah, Frank's right. It's true.
It's true.
It's true.
Wow.
It's true.
Okay, well
I was a little bit deceptive on how I worded it. The people abandoned their variation of Polynesian gods and switched to the god Maki Maki, which is depicted as a birdman holding an egg. He was a fertility god that represented hope and renewal, which fit in the whole, declining civilization needing a wing and a prayer. But each year they would choose an authoritarian chief with like unlimited control by holding a race to see which tribe could return with an egg first. The winning tribe's chief would then become a supreme leader for a year. The hunt wasn't as easy as it sounds, though. The goal was to return the first sooty-turn egg after the birds returned to the island each year to nest on the cliffs of a small by neighboring island. The race began on top of a 1,000-foot rock face. They would then have to climb down the cliff, then swim a mile across shark-infested waters, climb the cliffs of the neighboring island, find an egg, and return the way they came. So if you thought the American primaries and campaigning was tough, try having your political ambitions eaten because someone got eaten by a shark.
Well, you know what? This is also going to be the location of the next Survivor next year.
I want it to be the location of the next Republican nominee. I want to see swim. Let's see who's going to win. Who's not going to get eaten by a shark?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that, Troy. We got to move on here.
Okay.
Excellent. Brently, you got another brilliant moment for us, my friend?
I do. So I saw a tweet just recently. It was from this woman named she goes by the Transformed Wife. I'm not sure.
I hate her. Sorry. I know who she is.
Oh my god. I didn't know who she was. I heard her name mentioned like before and stuff, but I didn't know like just how crazy she was.
Oh, I'm sorry, my sweet summer child. I'm sorry.
I grew
I'm
up
so
in the
sorry.
80s. I just think of transformed wife, and it's just like how a woman walking around like Transformers sound.
Transformer.
Right.
It's the pink one.
Yeah, she's Optimus' wife. Yeah.
The biggest part we had the worst cartoons, didn't we?
If you cannot tell, we grew up watching a lot of 80s shit.
You know, what I always find amazing is like you remember 80s cartoons being so friggin' awesome. And you go back and watch them now,
like,
and they're
oh,
absolute
no.
crap compared to what kids have nowadays.
Right.
So old He-Man cartoons, if you watch it with a gay lens, it's super gay. And it
Oh,
makes it
yeah.
so much better.
Planet.
Anyway, let's hear what the transformed white vet is say. I'm sure it was very,
I'm sure
very
it was very
insightful.
Right.
And I bet it was sexist.
Oh yeah. So her name is Lori Alexander, right? And she's been married since 1980. But she said her ministry is based on some verse in Titus 2:3, in which God commands that older women teach younger women to be sober, love and obey their husbands, love their children, and be chaste. I don't know. Chaste. Okay. Discreet, good, and keepers at home. So she's very much about that.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
I
God
think
said it.
Corinthians where it says women are allowed to teach, but
She's terrible.
Right.
She's awful. She's the worst. Like, I do not like her.
Right? She seems totally crazy. So like the other day she did a tweet, and it's just it's mind-numbingly like crazy that she just, I don't know, just here's her tweet. So it says, women overwhelmingly vote Democrat and for abortions. I would gladly give up my right to vote to stop this madness. It's sad that men caved. Sad that men caved into women's demands in many areas. God created them to be leaders in the home, churches, and in society. So she's basically saying I shouldn't be allowed to vote.
She's basically saying women shouldn't be trusted with the vote. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, this internalized misogyny just drives me insane. But, and also too, she's being completely hypocritical because in the Bible it says women are not supposed to speak. You're not supposed to have any sort of ministry. So I'm like, oh, you're just going to ignore that part, but tell other people how they should live their lives. Okay.
Right? Yeah, because I bet you tweeting wouldn't be allowed either. You know what I mean? I mean, tweeting's pretty quiet. You know, it's pretty quiet. It can be. But it's, you know, it's still speaking. You know?
She doesn't think women should go to college. She thinks that, she basically has this idea that you are supposed to be raised by your father. It's the whole quiverful, like, you know, and your husband has complete dominance over you, and you're supposed to keep the home and take care of the kids. And any other ambition that you have to chuck that aside and just put it aside for God. So that is her whole shtick, and it's disgusting and terrible.
No, it's exactly what I was saying to a friend of ours yesterday. So it's amazing that women have this unofficial role in our society today as guardians of tradition, yet they're guarding and protecting a tradition that is incredibly misogynistic towards them to begin with, right? It's like, wow, it's just absolutely amazing. And this is a perfect example right there.
Well, let's see if I can't get myself into trouble here. Because, like, in my opinion, women should have the right to choose to be whatever the heck they want. So, like, if they want to be a homemaker,
that's fine.
Like a homemaker job is just as much work as a full time, like as any other job. It's a.
I am no way saying in any way that you shouldn't be able to choose that, but it should be a choice.
Yeah, and
then when you start telling other women or other people that, if you want to go to an education, if you don't want kids, if you want to choose the life that you want to lead, that's bad.
Yeah,
that's the problem.
You're basically indoctrinating them while robbing them of all opportunity to be the best person they can be. So it's like if you go to these like some of these Mormon offshoot Mormon sects, you'll have young girls get educated up to about grade 6, and then after that it's like time to start thinking about getting married, and they're programmed to think that it's perfectly fine for them to marry like a 60, 70-year-old man. Yeah. And it's welcome to Bountiful BC. but it's a case where, like, when you keep, like, the type of ideology she's teaching is she's basically saying keep women stupid, keep women submissive, and make sure that they're going to be good housewives, and take away their any opportunity of being independent, because
at the beginning, at the start of her marriage, she was way more independent. She was educated, and she was able to have some mobility. And then something happened in her marriage, probably because her husband was probably being a dominating jerk face. She switched to a more biblical standard of living for women. And then I guess because the internet and wanting attention and want to make some money, she started her ministry, which is disgusting in my opinion. It's just terrible. She's also said, and surprisingly, she said horrible things about queer people and people of color. Shocking, I know.
To look at her, she's got like the ankle dress, you know what I mean, like the puff sleeve. She looks like she's straight out of Anna Green Gables or some shit.
Is it an ankle jean dress? That's the thing here. It's like you can always spot them. They're wearing jean dresses with the same hairstyle. It's like a Children of the Corn.
We used to live, like I told you before, we lived closest to like the Mennonite community, one of the biggest in Florida, and in Sarasota has one of the biggest Mennonite communities. And you just know, and they wear plain dresses and they have bonnets and they have the beards and they, ride motorized bikes, but they have cell phones and own businesses. It's all very strange. Yeah. It's all very, very strange.
But
they have some of the best food ever, like Yoder's pies are amazing. They are amazing.
So the lesson here is don't listen to the transformed wife.
Don't listen to her wife. She's terrible.
Yeah, she said something dumb enough to be.
She's really a Decepticon.
Decepticon woman. Yes.
Thank you, Brently. Thank you. All right, guys, let's take a quick pause, and when we'll be back, we'll be with our old friend Professor Edwin Hodge, and we'll be talking about incels again. That'll be fun. So stay.
It's my birthday present.
Okay, welcome back. Well, our returning champion is Professor Edwin Hodge. He's a sociologist at UVic University, Victoria. He's a snappy dresser and a sassy dancer. Professor Hodge, thank you so much for being back on the show.
Good day.
All right.
Welcome. Are we going to do the applaud this time?
No applause. Rude.
Fine.
You're too kind. You're too kind.
There it is.
I think I've done that since playing floor hockey as a kid. It's like, he scores, the crowd goes wild. Let's go join an incel.
Professor Hodge, for those of our listeners that may have missed you the last time you were around, maybe you'd be so kind to give us a quick bio as to who Professor Edwin Hodge is.
Sure. So I'm an instructor in the Department of Sociology at UVic. It's the University of Victoria. I am also a research fellow at the Center for Global Studies at the University of Victoria, and I have several other hats that I wear occasionally.
Last time you came around, we started talking about the whole phenomenon of incels. Mm-hmm. And for those that might have missed that first episode, maybe give us a brief description as what is an incel?
So incels, this is a term that just means involuntarily celibate. At least that's the way it's used in the within the space, and it's less a community and more of a kind of ideology that's floating around primarily online. That is profoundly misogynist, more than a little conspiratorial, and has been linked to outbursts of anti-women. So misogynist and anti-feminist violence, both in Canada and the United States over the last decade or so.
Mm. Okay. It's interesting that when we see the whole incel phenomenon, and they have a very interesting way of justifying their belief, they seem that a lot of these interpretations and their beliefs are based on things they call like biological determinism, evolutionary psychology. Also, they also endorse the idea of female hypergamy.
Yeah,
which is really, the idea that apparently 80% of women are attracted to 20% of men, and that's how they're left out. Is there what does sociologists think about this?
I mean, yeah. So the hypergamy thing, like, there is this, broadly speaking, we sort of talk about the idea that that in some cultures, women, as a sort of a strategy, women can marry up. So if you're in, for example, like a caste system, and you're in a lower caste, marrying into a higher caste moves you into a higher caste, yada yada. So there is some historical and anthropological basis for this concept. They have twisted it, unsurprisingly, and they have made the argument that women everywhere, due to biology or something, all women everywhere engage in this practice. And as to sort of cite evidence, because, you know, they claim to be real big on like logic and reason and evidence. The evidence they cite is often a really bad survey that came from a dating app like 10 years ago.
Well, it can't be that bad. They did do their own research.
They studied it out. Yeah.
They went to the University of Reddit.
Like if you can't trust a YouTube influencer for a life decision,
that's like, exactly
who
it.
Can you trust?
Yeah, they did their postdoctoral fellowship at the University of some guy in the bar told me. Yeah.
So peer reviewed what?
Yeah, it's peer. He's my peer, and he reviewed
it.
Yeah. So it's based in nothing. The evidence is it's not even, you can't even call it that. It's just slipshod reasoning. But it's also heavily conspiratorial, right? So there's this idea that there's, you know, that often you hear like or get this sense from them that they think that women are like a hive mind, that they all are like getting together and taking notes and exchanging ideas on how to oppress, I don't know, ugly men.
You're saying hive mind. I'm just thinking men are from Mars, women are from the Borg Collective or something.
Yeah, Resistance is Utah.
Yeah.
I mean, we do all get together in our little cabal online and conspire. Like, you know, that's when Dawn tells you that she's doing something else, we're really doing our hive mind meeting.
That's fair.
That's how it works.
She goes back and she goes somewhere, she's actually messaging Helen and they say, okay, which one of these three ugly men do we pick on today?
I believe
that's right. We have to bring them down because, you know, we don't want them to have any we don't want them to get. We have to pick someone that doesn't get to get laid. That's exactly. Rules.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah,
you know, somebody's got to take the fall. But this is sort of the thing that kind of like reveals the lie, right? Is they have this belief that like 10% of men are hooking up with 90% of women, but like just a basic like sitting for 5 minutes and looking around shows that is absolutely not the case. It's, you know, like it's just empirically it's nonsense. Ideologically it's heavily skewed. But what it does provide is a sense of validation for a lot of these guys, a sense that they're being heard by others, that they are part of something, right? So the ones that sort of see the incel movement, they see this ideology as like social movement. They see, okay, I'm part of something now. I'm part of something that's gonna, you know, if not change the world, at least get even.
So I'm listening to your description of this, and I'm kind of wondering, like, what's the difference between an incel and a He-Man woman haters cult? Like, it sounds like a really culty.
Yeah, that's so. Yeah, I mean, getting into like sociology, I mean, most new religious movements, if we're looking at the kind that are big into like isolating folks, right? So the things that we used to call a cult, yeah, incels are very, very similar to that, right? They are self-referential in terms of like how they understand the world. They don't seek outside information. They just seek internal validation from each other. Mm-hmm. They tend to eliminate outside information that disagrees with them, or they vilify it, say that it's evil, or that it's more appropriately that it's the feminazis or something, or you know, they've invaded, they've infiltrated all universities, and so any scientific information is all bullshit. And so they build this like inward looking sort of closed loop of knowledge production that doesn't allow for any kind of outside influence. And in that way, they are kind of
So they're like a cult, but without a leader.
Yeah, pretty much. Although they look at there'll be influencers online that they're interested in, but they come and go. They're like a dime a dozen.
Yeah, so man get arrested in Romania for
Andrew Tate. Excuse me.
So we hear a lot that this is like a young man phenomenon. Do older men get involved? Like once they get past their mid-20s, is there older gentlemen that are like infiltrate in the is there like a middle-aged man incel community?
Yeah.
No, they just go to the beer militias. No.
Those are out cells,
Yeah,
on their way out.
They go from worrying about girls to like collecting guns. So.
Yeah, they're the old cells. They there doesn't. So there are some, like I can't make a universal claim or anything, but there are some. But a lot of the older ones, they like the middle-aged dudes. If they're moving into those worlds, they tend to be moving into like the men's rights groups, the fathers' rights groups, because they're middle-aged, and so chances are many of them have been in relationships before, or have families, or have gone through a divorce, which is one of the sort of trigger incidents that can make some men especially vulnerable to this kind of recruitment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Because it's just been something I've been wondering about, because I find incels like this very weird, fascinating topic. It's like, because cult-like behavior is just very fascinating to me. And I was thinking about it. I was like, you don't hear a whole lot about like people, our age that are involved in, these groups. But now that you're talking about like the men's rights movements and I think like I think I've heard some of the arguments in the fathers' rights movements and stuff that makes sense. I think there should be more equality in the court system for fathers to have more access to their children, and not being the burden of always financially supporting. I get it. I think we can have conversations about that, but when it gets into the woman hating, you're destroying my life type of shit, I'm just like, well, not. But I'm like, yeah, I want you to have equal access to kids. Do you also want your children to hate their mom?
Yeah.
So and then it gets weird and kind of gross after that.
Well, this is actually like, just to maybe if I could push back just a little bit.
You can push back all you want.
The notion that family courts are prejudiced against men has been shown to be bullshit anyways.
Yeah.
We know that about 90 to 95% of all custody arrangements that happen in divorces happen informally or through mediation. So they never actually get to the courts at all.
Mine was a mediation. So
yeah. The ones that do go to court, men tend to win primary custody about 53% of the time. And the reason for that is that financial stability is a huge factor in who gets the kids. Well, in a lot of relationships, even if there's a dual income household, men continue to be primarily the largest earners in families, right? So they make the argument that they're more financially stable. But when it goes through arbitration and mediation, or when it goes through informal arrangements, oftentimes that presumption that women are just natural caregivers shows up, and men are just like, oh yeah, sure, you have primary custody, I'll take them on the weekend. And then they get angry after the fact.
That's interesting. I didn't really think. Okay, that makes sense. Now that I'm putting it together, like I'm just like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Because you hear on their side that the women are always winning the custody, But but also too, they're the type of people that I'm kind of like, well, maybe the kids shouldn't be around this person all the time. Yeah. So now that you're talking about it, it's starting to make like the pieces are coming together.
Yeah, it's super complicated, and like one of the reasons that these movements have been able to really kind of bring people onto their side a little bit is so two things. One, they gish gallop, they'll hit you with like all of these studies and sources that talk about like gender parity and domestic violence, which is not a thing. Or the cases of who has primary custody. Again, has nothing to do with the courts hating men. It has everything to do with men assuming that women are better caregivers more often than not. So they hit people with that, but they also actually are playing into a pretty core element of liberal, sort of the liberal worldview, of liberal ideology, which is that a good liberal hears both sides, tries to find the best in their opponent's arguments, and tries to meet them somewhere in the middle. Intuitively, we have this sense that, like, oh yeah, well, like if I'm being a good liberal, if I'm being a good enlightened sort of person, they'll have their side, I'll have my side, and I'll try to listen and try to, find somewhere in the middle. But in a lot of cases, the truth is actually they're wrong and another side is right. But we are often sort of tricking ourselves into giving them a greater benefit of the doubt than maybe these arguments deserve.
I have personal experience going through the family court system, and like I did get custody, but at the same time, though, the mom had a lot of problems that she was going through. But it's I will say that when I first got into the system, what I was seeing was a lot like what the stereotypes that we see today is. Like 12, 15 years later, when it's like this was a long battle. But like 12 to 15 years later, then all of a sudden we started to see fathers starting to get more rights, and you had more positive outcomes. So I think it's a case where I think the stats agree with you now. I almost want to see the stats over like a 10, 20 year period to see if that's always been the case, because I don't think it's always been the case, or at least from my own experience. But that's a compositional fallacy, right, or argument. But it's just from what I've seen from my own experience. At one time, the mothers definitely got preferential treatment when it came to custody, but I don't think it's that way anymore.
Yeah, and that's the sort of the right way of going about it. Is I want to see some longitudinal studies that look at this over time, as opposed to what often happens in these movements, which is somebody finds a one-off study, latches onto it, and assumes that one-off study speaks for or overrides all the studies that came before.
Like the alpha male study, which was based on wolves, and then the guy that did the study debunked it, his own study. But people still hold on to that. But it's become so much a part of the culture that I'm like, this doesn't exist.
It's not a thing.
Or like where most studies come from nowadays, someone just makes a really convincing meme saying that it's from a study, and everybody just assumes it's true.
Well, we memes do a lot of anchoring,
Well, we can see how many people get into this, because some of these laws, regarding custody, are fairly recent in our history. This is not laws that were written in the 1600s, but there are laws that were written in the 1900s, in the 1950s and 60s, where men were primarily the breadwinners, and a lot of women were still at home. So the law was kind of written in a way to give women a chance, right? The laws of alimony and stuff like that, they were written, but we're now in the 2000s. These laws have also evolved, but I think a lot of these men's right still think in the mindset of what the law was in 1960.
Well, culture changes too, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Look at dad parenting back in the 50s and 60s. It's like, oh, dad spoke to me today. I'm a lucky kid. Yep. Whereas like nowadays, it's like dads are in there, they're active, they're trying to be the best parent they can be. Where it's like, go back 50, 60 years, and it's like, well, I pay the bills, don't I?
Yeah.
Well,
what else do you want from a dad?
To my dear friends, her husband stays home, and she's making really good money. So, and she works, and they have a almost 2-year-old, and they go because she makes more money. And I always tease him, like, don't you feel emasculated? He's like, yeah, I'm so emasculated being at home taking care of my daughter. It's always. But so getting kind of back, I know we're talking about, we kind of went on this conversation of men's rights, but
that was my fault.
No, it's fine, because because there is a cross-generational thing that happens when people sort of take on the idea that this group of people is holding me back. This this person is doing this to me, and it's the system, and women suck, and or whatever it is, or on women's side where we're like men suck, and they're holding us down and which fine, okay, but like at a certain point, there has to be a certain responsibility. Like there are systems in place that do keep people down, but that's a different issue than individual circumstances that you can change. And and that's the thing that's so worrying. So my question is like, what happens what gets people like out, like when they're in the incel community and then like they decide like, oh, maybe it's me. Like what is that trigger usually for them?
Listening to Taylor Swift's Hero.
Of course. Exactly.
Hi, I'm the problem. It's
look what you made me do.
So really what gets these folks out is actually a couple of things. One is actually meeting someone. These folks, in some cases, despite themselves, some of them will meet someone, and when that happens, they're almost immediately vilified by the other incels, right, as being posers or fake or whatever, right? Yes. Yeah, and so that. What's that?
I was saying, I'm just thinking like the juvenile nature of this level of thinking. Because I'm thinking back to grade 4, grade 5, where you have your group of friends, and then somebody gets a girlfriend, and it's like all the other guys are like super jealous.
Yeah,
and it's like all of a sudden it's like they excommunicate the guy or whatever because of the fact that he's not one of us anymore.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, it's like they're jealous.
It's a phenomenon that, like, I mean, it's been around for ages. Terry Pratchett writes about it in his books when he talks about the crab bucket. Actually, Chaos, a hip hop artist in Canada, has a song about it, crab bucket, where the idea that like you can take a bunch of crabs, you just put them in a bucket, and you don't actually have to like keep them in because they'll do a great job of pulling back any crab that tries to pull itself out. That's these guys. They anytime someone tries to get out, someone just thinks they have to be black pilled or red pilled or whatever pilled again to get them to sort of reinforce. So in sociology, we would look at that as a kind of boundary maintenance where identity construction, identity formation, and then the reproduction of that identity over time requires constant input. So in a lot of movements, especially the more like culty sort of new religious movements and even other religious movements, but in these as well, once you are affiliated, once you buy in and you're like, yeah, I'm one of you, I've got the flag and everything, other people within the movement begin to sort of self-appoint. They begin to see themselves as guardians or watchmen. That it's not necessarily in like a super overt, like, you got to think, right, boy. But every time someone expresses a doubt, someone will be like, oh, are you sure? Like, is everything, or I haven't talked to you in a few weeks. You haven't logged in a while. Is everything okay? Like, can you come hang out? And they try to reinforce that identity. So how do you get guys out of this? Distance and time. Yeah. You can say to them simple things like, oh, you don't need this group. You just know you have this belief and this, it's not about that the group you're a part of. It's you have this belief sincerely. Great. Stop talking to them for a month. If you're so like set in your ways, if you are so confident that you're right and that you know this stuff and that this is who you are now, stop talking to that group for a month. Just do it. Right.
So rewind like a long ways, and like say you're a young male, life you're just starting to realize like life sucks. You got to get a helmet. Things aren't going the way that you want.
My Adam's apple is too big. Whatever.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden you start getting approached. Like you start getting approached by these groups. Like, what are the red flags that people should like look out for?
I mean, that's the thing is a lot of it's super subtle. Back in the day, recruitment into these kinds of movements happened through like pretty overt ways. So like I'm thinking back to the men's rights guys. The men's rights movement's been kicking around since like 1972, 1973. And if you wanted to join the group, like if you didn't know they existed, there was nothing you could do, but they would recruit, and they would recruit by hanging around like family courts, or they would go into colleges and they'd look for men who were already part of like men's liberation groups. And then they would be like, yeah, but what about your needs? What about your issues? Come hang out with us. They give them a leaflet or whatever. Same way that like Klansmen and Nazis used to give out pamphlets, informational literature.
Unless they're in the States, then they get a leaflet and a gun.
Yeah.
Well, it's at the gun shows. That's where
it's at the gun show. Yeah. Here's your Glock, and over there is your hood.
Yeah.
But go see Tony.
You get your wizard robes.
Exactly. We'll get you fitted.
We're racist Hogwarts.
Exactly. Let the sorting hat choose. Which Knights of the Southern Ku Klux Klan chapter were you? But today, the red flags are a lot more subtle. It can be anything like sharing like an edgy meme. So if you go into spaces as a young man, right, and you're hanging around in spaces, you're feeling kind of down, and you see that there's a lot of memes that are sort of validating that kind of rage, or that feeling of isolation or alienation. If you're on a Discord and they start dropping terms like femoids or like, my personal favorite, the second that you're hanging around with men who just as a group refer to women the way Ferengi do by like female, that for me is like, it's a small flag that goes up. It's interesting that guys are like guys, dudes, bros, whatever, but women are always females. they're women. I
do like being referred to the scientific term of my gender, female.
I'm just trying to get
with an emphasis on the fee. It's very, very validating for me. Let me tell you.
It's gross. Are you doing something in a lab? Are you testing something to do with biology? Fine, female. But in random conversation, if you find a bunch of guys that are like, yeah, me and my bros and that female over there, yikes. But a lot of it is actually, it just takes place over time, right? And it's the slow accumulation of a way of thinking.
It's the frog in water.
In one of my papers, I referred to it as the gradual Hitler, where like it's just a slow, steady ramping up of rhetoric that starts edgy and just a joke, and then moves into a little more a little deeper, a little more extreme, a little more edgy, a little more over the line, and at every stage you're going to lose people, right? Because they're going to be like, no, that's a bridge too far, I'm not going there. But you're going to get some who are like, no, I get that. That's funny. I have dark humor. And, and they keep going. And so that's why, like, when I describe echo chambers to my students, echo chambers aren't like a silo. They're not like a sphere. They're a funnel, right? And you move down that funnel. You get pulled down it slowly. And as you move down that funnel, the information, the sort of the variety of information that's available to you shrinks, right? So you have a narrowing sort of like a narrowing of information, and a ratcheting up of ideological sort of extremism or radicalization.
That's a very good.
I think you just described every Facebook group out there.
That's why I love the model, because it actually really works for pretty much any intentional social group. Because it doesn't matter where you are.
I'm gonna just I'm a huge Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I fan, and I'm
I was gonna say, I thought you were just Buffy.
I'm Buffy, but no, I've seen this on forums where we talk about Buffy, and they'll excuse away terrible behavior made by characters, and I'm like, if someone pushes back against it, they'll be like, well, I was only kidding. Or, well, they try to excuse. Yeah. I'm like, no, you were kind of condoning something that's really, really bad, even though because the way it's worded, they're using the character to justify an idea that they're holding.
Yeah.
You know, and when you call them out, they say like, well, I don't really mean that. You know,
yeah, it was just a joke. Come on.
It was just a joke. Like, you're thinking too much about it.
Yeah.
I'm like,
sorry.
No, and I go, well, if it was only a joke or you didn't really think that, then why did you post it?
Yeah. I was talking with a relative of mine who is younger. They were an adolescent when I was talking to them, and we were chatting over Steam, and which is, again, another place where all kinds of weird shit happens. But we were chatting, and they sent me a little swastika icon, and I just responded with, "What are you doing? What is that?" And,
unless you're Hindu, that's a no-go.
So, and that's exactly the response. They said, "It's fine. It's nothing. In the Hindu religion, it's a symbol of like peace or whatever." And I said, "Okay, fine, but
name me one Hindu god."
Yeah, but since we're not in India, we're not in a Hindu culture. We're in a culture where that symbol means something very, very different. Were you in fact intending to tell me that you have suddenly converted and you would really like to celebrate Diwali, right? Like, no, you are clearly sending me a Nazi image. Yeah. And I said, so this whole like little rhetorical thing that you're doing, this little like wordplay of like, oh, no, it's actually this older stuff. No, buddy, like, someone of Indian descent who is a practicing Hindu. Yeah, if they post something like that, yeah, contextually from our context clues, we can tell, yeah, they're probably not a Nazi.
Also, there's one thing as well. The Hindu symbol is actually the wheel spins the other way.
Well, yeah,
it spins one way, but the Hindu is reverse. It spins the other way.
Yeah, and the Nazi symbol tends to be on an angle.
Yeah,
but yeah, and so like having a simple conversation with them, being like, yeah, you can be funny however you want, but anyone who's receiving that, they're not a mind reader. They're going to see that for what it actually is in this context, which is a hate symbol by the Nazis. So you just sent me something that makes me wonder, do you harbor Nazi sympathies? And they were like, no, not at all. And I'm like, well, maybe think twice then. But in online spaces, young folk who can be convinced of some pretty shitty arguments, they might not think that way. So they start trading in these edgy, like funny memes. And then then they, over time, it becomes normalized. They don't even think about it anymore. And then they just start sending them out.
Yeah, that was like the whole Pepe the Frog thing, right? Wasn't that a whole thing?
Yeah.
Well, Pepe, yeah. And also too, like if you're getting like 14, 15-year-old boys who they're, when you're 14, 15 years old, what, like, malls aren't a thing anymore. Like when we were 14, 15 years old, you went to the mall and you would try to find places to go hang out with your friends because the internet was the thing. Now everybody hangs out on the internet, Like I had to educate my kids on what to be careful for. And because, my son's 19 now. And I'd be like, you have to watch out for this. You have to watch out for this because this is, and a lot of parents aren't paying attention to the internet language that happens in these spaces. And if you're not educated on it, you're not going to notice it at all. And then so you have a 14, 15-year-old boy. He's isolated. He goes to school, and maybe he doesn't have a lot of hobbies and, his parents work and so he goes online and then he gets sucked into like going to Discord or going to 4chan or whatever it is and starting to see edgy memes and stuff like that. And he doesn't have any sense of true self yet, that's developing, and they can fall into some really bad ideas.
And because their parents aren't aware of what's happening, they don't know to reach out and to be like, hey, there's something really sketchy going on here. So like, I have this image that I use in some classes where I teach about extremism, Friend World. And it's just like this shitty frog drawing. And it's, oh no, friends, I spilled my snack. And it's just a bunch of fruit like falling through the air. And people, and I say, okay, point out the racism in this. And nobody can. And these are parents and grandparents. And I said, point out the racism. This is a weapons grade anti-Semitic image that I'm showing them. And they can't see it. I'm like, it's right here. And I pointed out, as soon as they see it, then it's apparent. But I said, that's the whole point of this meme, is It goes right under the radar. Kids can trade in this stuff right in front of their parents' faces. And their parents will be like, oh, that's an interesting picture. Why do you care about such a dumb cartoon? And the kid can be like, it's funny. But, you know, they're trading in actual anti-Semitism right in front of their parents.
Wow.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
there's
like
a lot of
if
coded
you go in,
speech too.
like
Yeah.
I don't particularly like going into those spaces. Like I do more of like a research of like, you know, of internet memes and things that there are being are shared on like these, you know, on Steam and 4chan and Discord, places that aren't as regulated as some other places. And there is some shit that once you start looking at it and you see it, and if I wasn't educated and wanting to seek it out so I could have to protect my kids, you're not going to know what you're looking for. You're just not.
Yeah, exactly.
Professor Hodge, you know, when you look at these groups, you talk about like the incels, the pickup artists. I hate those guys. The father's right. Who's eating? A whole bunch of noise that's eating here. Who's eating?
So, I'm sorry. That was me. That was me adjusting my straw. I'm done. I'm sorry. I was adjusting my straw.
So all these groups and all that stuff, they form what they call the manosphere, right?
Yeah.
And even though the incels have a tendency to look at themselves and describe themselves as genetically inferior, is it correct to say that the manosphere is actually a way of trying to push male supremacy in the community?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. The short answer is yes. The long answer is there are shoals and very deep places in the manosphere, right? It's not all quite the same. So you'll get guys that are on the moderate end, right? And they identify or affiliate with the men's rights movement. But their arguments are limited to things like, I just wish men had equal rights to women. I mean,
so do women.
Yeah, like
I'm like scowl. What?
Like so the argument, of course, is kind of a like. All right, so the problem is it's a nonsense claim. Men do have every single right that women have. That is, men are not persecuted. Men are not oppressed as a cult, as a category, as an identity category. Hyphenated men absolutely are. Gay men, queer men, trans men, black men, like indigenous men, racialized men. Men are oppressed, but their oppression emerges from the hyphenation, not from their masculinity. But they, at the very least, can acknowledge that, like, oh yeah, women have a hard time. And I just wish that more people would listen to men and give us equal rights. Fine. Like that's the moderate end.
Right.
I mean, just to be a little biased, if you really want to talk about men and men's lives and men's issues from a space that is not at all affiliated with the manosphere, you look at stuff like the pro-feminist men's movement or the academic study of men and masculinities. It's a deep and rich field of study that's been going on for 50 years. We have journals, Men and Masculinities. They're high quality, very, very well regarded, well reviewed journals that are all about men's lives. The men's rights movement doesn't really play in that sandbox. They've got their own. So you'll get guys in the moderate end that are just like basically like men's liberation guys, but they've made a couple of wrong turns in their reasoning. And then it goes deeper and you get the men's rights guys that are like, no, men are actually the most oppressed and persecuted class in society, which is just a conspiratorial claim rooted in nothing. And then you get like the red pill men and like those men who actually think that a lot of men's rights activists are sellouts and like wusses. And they are all about being like the hard alpha. Andrew Tate.
So yeah, this is the question though, like, because you get incels that are like, you know, that are in these communities, like, don't try to get laid. You know, it's going to be a fruitless effort. And then it goes into, you have to be like a pickup artist. Yeah. You have to, you know, be the biggest, baddest male, you know, in the playing field. And both of those are bad, like in any sort of extreme, because they're ideologies of things that are not realistic for, you know, for the average and any part of the extreme. So it's just, I find it a little frustrating, I guess, to a certain degree, because like, you know, like my husband, like he jokes around that he was kind of shy when he was growing up, and then he built some confidence doing competitive horse racing, and then when he got into his teenage years, he's like, I found rock and roll in girls, you know, and he's like, and I learned to play bass, and I got attention from girls, you know, and that, but he goes, but I never did it intentionally. It just because he goes, I was also nice to people. Yeah. You know, so it's because he developed hobbies and things he was interested in and found a sense of self.
And because he was nice. Like,
always be nice to people. Even if you're not trying to get, like, just be nice. Don't be dickheads.
Anyway. Yeah.
But being nice is not a condition. It's not an element of many parts of the manosphere's ideology, right? The idea, so it's not just that these beliefs are unrealistic, it's that they're fundamentally dehumanizing to half the population. They are grounded in an accepted belief that women are subhuman or inferior or whatever. So like red pill men who are all like the hardcore traditionalists that are looking for the trad wife, they do so not because they're looking for a partner, because they're looking for a maid, a servant, someone who's submissive. Men going their own way, the MGTOW guys. They basically argue that all relationships with women should be instrumental and transactional. So you want something from them, you want to get laid, you want to get your rocks off. So you hook up, and that's literally it. You don't do anything else. Incels do the same thing, right? They dehumanize women. They argue that women are the cause of everything. And so, yes, some of them don't want to get laid at all. All they want to do is make women suffer the way that they feel they've been made to suffer. But they don't realize that the person who's making them suffer is them. And so these movements are toxic in the most literal sense of or most literal definition of the term. They literally poison the person that's involved in them. That's part of what makes it so dangerous.
Also funny, because like also too and then like if they see people in healthy relationships, they have to create a narrative that relation isn't really healthy. You know, like, she must be manipulating him in some way, you know, or, you know, like I see the way he treats her, you know, he's totally alpha over her. And like, they have to create these narratives of people that actually have healthy relationships, or like, I bet he was in shape when they first got together, but now that, you know, she's there, you know, she's like, well, he's obviously financially supporting her. She wouldn't be able to find anybody else, you know, blah, 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 whatever fucking bullshit they have to.
Yeah, every woman is a manipulator. Every man is a simp, and like if you, that's their fundamental philosophy. And anyone who appears to challenge that, they have some form of special pleading that, they're not. It's like a no true Scotsman kind of thing, right? It's like, well, they're not because X, Y, and Z. Well, wait a second, what's going on here? Like, if all men are simps and that man is clearly in an egalitarian, healthy partnership. Oh, that's not really healthy. There's something that must be going on. Yeah, it's fundamentally it's a self-sabotaging, self-defeating ideology.
Right.
I find it interesting also that, of course, you know, this is an atheist-based show, and you can't help but notice that in the incel movement, it comes a point in time where religion creeps in.
Yep.
Especially, you know, they're involuntary celibate, and they say, well, you shouldn't look out to get laid anyway. You should try to remain pure. And then the Christian movement comes in at that point. Is it just me, or is that something that even sociologists have noticed?
I mean, there are some. There are certainly some that are drawn by this, especially a lot of the trad men, like the reactionary sort of red pill men that are all about like finding that help meet trad wife. Like there's often a deep component of like of religiosity of some kind, right? Be it Christian or pagan or whatever. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there is a huge swath of the atheist community that are active members of various manosphere groups.
Because it's all science, man. It's science.
Yeah, we're talking about. What's that?
It's the logic, bro.
It's logic. It's all logic.
It's logic. I'm a man. I am thinking. Therefore, whatever I think is logic and I don't have emotion. I have facts and evidence. And oh, you see me getting mad? No, I'm just righteously outraged. I'm furious at your illogic. Yeah, I mean, I was heavily active in atheist communities and skeptic communities during Elevator Gate.
Gamergate was also a terrible time for atheists, and even outspoken females. If you were a gamer or if you were an atheistic female, if you're a woman on the internet that has an opinion about something, and it still happens because I get it in comment sections.
Oh, I got drummed out of a skeptics organization or skeptics group that I helped start because it was taken over by men's rights activists. And when you tried to point out little things like white men are not structurally oppressed in Canada, they just rage about it. It got bad enough that like if you were a racialized person, if you were queer, if you were trans, if you were a filthy accommodationist, I mean you were out. And we started seeing that like a lot of the atheists and skeptics who also said things like, you know, religion has oppressed a lot of women, and you know that like women still don't have equal rights in a lot of places. You'd get angry men rolling into the comment sections, rolling up into your skeptics in the pub meetings, and just derailing everything. I mean, the culture war found the atheist community pretty early and pretty hard.
Wow, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh, it was.
Oh yeah,
it was bad. It was a bad scene.
Well,
if you're hanging out and like if you're a woman talking on the internet, you're going to get misogyny. And if you're that's why there's not a lot of women atheist activists that are out, because there's so much backlash against us from atheist men. Because we are entering their sphere. This is the sphere of logic and science and reason. Like, I can't be here.
Yeah. They saw what happened to Rebecca Watson, and they just said, pass.
It's a shame because on this show, we've always tried so hard to push women's voices on the forefront, even though we seem to have lost one of our women today. I think she went to check if Timothy really says what it says. So I guess the question is, we talked about red flags, and we talked about, as a lay person, if you're seeing one of your friends, one of your male friends falling into that hole, we've talked about fishing them out, but I mean, really, what can you do as a person to help somebody that seems to be heading that way?
Yeah, this is the tough part. So if you see someone who's starting to, if they're sort of circling the drain, right, and they're saying like, there's some of what they're saying there's a lot of sense to that. That's where I start by pushing back and saying, okay, like let's actually have a talk about that. And because I'm me and I'm a pedant and I'm always about, okay, look, what level of analysis do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about lived experience? Do you want to talk about like societal stuff? What level do you want this conversation to be at? And what standard of evidence will you accept? So if you make an argument and I rebut it and I present you with evidence, what standard of evidence will you accept to change your mind? Because if there isn't one, we're not having a talk, right? Yeah. Because you don't actually have a belief. You have faith, right? You become dogmatic. But if they're just at the level of like they're sort of moving towards the edge, then I tend to be a little more like, let's talk about the substance of those beliefs and why they're fucked. But if they're already in it, you can't. Your success rate drops sharply if you're like, let's talk about that belief and why it's just objectively stupid. Because they will often say, oh, an outsider's trying to tell me that I'm wrong. I'm going to believe it even harder now because I'm learning something, right? It's called belief persistence or the backfire effect. So with those folks, that's where I tend to start employing the Socratic method and just saying, okay, well, walk me through your beliefs. And then every time something weird comes up, how do you justify that? Well, it's interesting because when I look around at the world and I see X, Y, and Z, it doesn't seem to relate to what you're seeing. So how do we resolve this problem? I never tell them. I just ask them. And the idea is to get them to trip into the gaps in the logic themselves, right? So that they'll start thinking about it. But if they're really deep down into it, a lot of times I'll just say, listen, do you value me as a friend? Yeah. Then you won't talk about any of that stuff around me. If you want to keep talking about it, if you want to, if this is who you are now, we can't be friends. Like, there has to be a cost. I mean,
I caught off one of my friends because he was starting to get into some like InfoWars Nazi ideology, where like it used to be a joke that Hitler had some good ideas, and then it started drifting into the Jews are controlling the media and all this type of stuff. And I was like, oh, we can't be friends anymore.
But Helen, they're turning the frogs gay, don't you know?
Yep. I know they're turning the frog.
The reptilian humanoid.
The Jews are turning the frog. Like I'm like, okay, and it was one of those things. I'm like, oh, you're believing conspiracy theories. You're actually believing that you're othering people. Oh, okay. Well, no. Well, we cannot be friends anymore. No.
And there's lots of overlap into that, isn't there? Like you got like, you probably would have a lot of conspiracies that are like the Illuminati and stuff also having the manosphere beliefs and all this other. It's like there's a lot of overlap on that side, right?
There's an unofficial term for it. At least it used to be back when in the sort of OG skeptical movement. It was called crank magnetism. It was just the idea that a person who believes in one conspiracy theory is far more likely to believe in multiple conspiracy theories. Mm-hmm. And so if you find someone who believes in the reptiloids, you found someone who also believes in the Illuminati, the NW, the New World Order. There's like a secret alien base under the Denver airport. Like, they'll believe in a bunch of stuff all together. And with like the manosphere stuff, you do sort of get some weird stuff that comes out on the fringes. A lot of like sort of bog standard moderate men's rights guys, like they don't have a lot of their core beliefs. A lot of them are just demonstrably false, but they're not super conspiratorial. But some like incels and others that go way out, you'll dig around in there and there'll be all kinds of weird stuff about like eugenics and like the secret history of like feminazi invasions of academia and society, and like it gets a little weird.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm part of the feminazi movement. I'm trying to get women to be smarter. So
I'm a simp for the feminazi.
I know you're a simp. Just like I don't like, and it's very interesting because I don't understand it. Like, but like, what do they think is going to happen? Like, what is this thing that they're concerned about? Because I like, what if we take this to an extreme, and all men are simps or they're alphas, and all women are manipulatory, and we just like are whatever ideology they've made up in their brain. What is the long-term outcome? There must be some kind of thing that they're going towards.
It depends on who you're talking to, but some of them have there's some elements that are kind of more revolutionary. Like eventually, once they sort of red pill enough men, and they get like red pill leaders in charge, like this is why Trump was such an attractive figure for a lot of these guys, is they'll say, well, they'll start changing society. They'll take society back, right? So they'll outlaw abortion. They'll outlaw contraception. They'll outlaw, I don't know, the abortion pill. What crazy dystopian hellscape would do that? Oh, wait.
Say, aren't they?
Yeah, the Handmaid's Tale should have not have been an instruction manual.
Yeah,
just
that's exactly it. So the revolutionary ones, this is kind of what they're into, right? Is they want this kind of like Gilead, where like even Jordan Peterson was like not so subtly intimating after the incel killer in Canada. That the government should take an active role in like ensuring that incel men have access to women for sex. And it's just like, what the fuck? Like what? Mandating sex? Like what?
So
he locked it back. But
well, I mean, this
it's not even. It's state-sponsored rape because in prostitution you get a choice.
Yeah.
So Gilead, state-sponsored rape.
This is an attractive group. Maybe we should, as a community effort, we should, be forced once a month to get a have sex with a less attractive person as a community service.
I'll take the bullet. I'll do it. It's fine. I'll sex with you else. Damn it.
I don't think my wife will let me.
Edwin, we talked a lot about the manosphere and all that stuff, but is there a female version, a woman's version of incel?
There's a femcel rise going on.
Femcel rise? Okay.
Yeah, it's a femcel rise going on. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Sorry, you were asking Edwin, but I fell into that rabbit hole the other day.
Helen's not wrong. She's bang on. There's a rise in like the femcel. One of the things I'd note that I find so fascinating about the femcel movement is it's not violent, right? Like a lot of it has some pretty like dire rhetoric, but a lot of it is like isolationist and like withdrawing from society and just buying cats.
But it's also on the same idea that like men are repressed. It's the same. It's just take everything we just talked about and put it in reverse. Men are repressing women. You have no upper mobility. Only the most attractive woman will get laid, and it's men that's keeping you down. That's why the pay gap is what it is, and it's all the same arguments. Just flip it on its head.
Well, I mean, just in some cases, it's empirically verifiable, right?
Yeah. I'm not saying it's not, because there is things like there is a pay gap issue, obviously, and
Roe v. Wade
being turned over. So but instead of just looking at power structures, it is every man is doing this to us, and they're terrible. And even when they claim to be feminists, they're really not, because they just want to control you if you get into a relationship with them, and it just goes down the rabbit hole.
There's that kind of dark imagining that comes with this, and that's a lot of the stuff is sort of, it comes out of loneliness and it comes out of isolation, and there's this sort of the sense that like rage and like public expressions of rage are still like looked down on in North America, right? Like you see someone just raging in public, you're just like, ooh, fuck. But if that rage is righteous, then that it has a different context or a different sort of connotation, a different value system attached. So a lot of these folks, you see their movements, and in their movements, they are trying to like wed their anger to a sense that they're valid and right, which gives them that moral high ground, so that they're no longer just like angry dudes or angry women. They're now righteous. They're warriors.
Well, I explained a couple of my exes.
So we've been like mostly talking about like incels as in like like old school Proud Boys, He-Man, woman haters and stuff. But like the descriptions that you have that you're making, though, it's like we can find that in like Helen mentions in like women's group. We can find it in political groups like MAGA or whatever. Like what are some other like main incels that we should watch out for? Is there a list, or is it just a general behavior? Or
so the patterns of behavior are the things that we'd be worried about, right? So like the elimination of disconfirming information, the unwillingness to be challenged or have your ideas critiqued, a very black or white sort of Manichaean thinking that is all about like you're right, everyone else is wrong, and not just wrong but evil. So there's a thread of what's called eliminationism. It's the idea that your opponent, they don't share your views. They're not just an ideological opponent. They are an enemy that is an existential threat to your way of life, right? So you see this in like conservative circles all the time, right? At the CPAC a few months ago, what's his name saying that trans people are the natural enemy of Christianity? Like that's a kind of stochastic terrorism that
he was basically calling, like not so subtly, calling for the genocide of trans people.
This is like
and then when he got called out on for it, he didn't really have a defense.
It's
fucking disgusting.
He just said, liberals are always trying to smear me, and it's like, but you said it.
You said it, dude. You're the one that said it.
He literally defined genocide. It's like, it's not actually genocide though, because it's not genetic.
The natural
it's not genocide because I don't recognize them as legitimate. But that kind of attitude, the notion that there can only be one outcome, right, which is the elimination of your enemy, a kind of like ideological certitude that doesn't brook any kind of even internal reflection, right? That is seen as like a weakening of who you are if you try to think critically about yourself. So these mindsets can, when they're wedded to things like political action and stuff, like this is where things get really, really dangerous, right? So like the MAGA movement is, in my view, it's a crypto-fascist movement, right? It's founded on a lot of fascist ideology, and you see a lot of those same elements present within like the incel groups, and even like extreme, like Andrew Tate is just like a petty fascist. Like that's a lot of his beliefs.
He's one of many. He was just very prolific at it.
And then now that he's in jail, there's that new TikTok person, Pearl something or other, that she's like trying to become the new red pill queen, and like, anyways.
There's always going to be someone. I mean, like we know this. It doesn't matter if it's online or not. That if somebody gets taken out, there's always some asshole to go ahead and take somebody else's place.
Yeah,
exactly. and be the big, like I'm the best, coolest person in the world, and everybody else is my enemy, and blah 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 blah.
Yeah,
that's all I hear. That's all I hear. I hear like Charlie Brown's teacher, because it's all the same shit. It's like, you're my enemy. Like, oh, there's going to be more Hispanics in California. That means the death of the white race. I'm like, when did that ever happen? I'm like, okay.
Well, I think most of the stuff you're describing is like more human nature than just plain incel nature, because like a lot of stuff that you're talking about, you start looking through history and you can see the same narratives being used with populism or false claims that rile people up just as much. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really matter if you're like left wing or right wing. I think everybody can fall for it. Like I've been in atheist groups before, where it's like you tell people, nope, Jesus isn't Horus, but yet they've bought into, like, they read a few books and they're convinced that that's the case, and they will get mean.
Oh, believe me. I've critiqued Richard Carrier and his theories, and dang, did people get mad at me about that.
I was told I wasn't a true atheist because I didn't read Hitchens on an atheist forum, and I was like, I'm like, is he our atheist god? I didn't know we had one. Like, somebody literally told me that. They were like, how did you become an atheist? And then we were having and they literally, have you read Hitchens? And I said, no, I didn't read any. Actually, I haven't read any of the Four Horsemen. And then they're like, well, you're not really a true atheist. You really have to listen to Hitchens' arguments. And I'm like, do I have to?
You don't not believe in God, right? That's what.
That's right.
People are atheists for different reasons, right? Like some people, they read a book. Some people, they were never raised religious. For me, I was religious my entire life, but it took me like a year and a half of like studying history and crap to realize just how bogus a lot of the stuff that was told was true was actually false. And I think that's, like, not to be mean and draw a connection between like incels and religion, but like in religion, depending on what kind of church you're in, you can get the same things happening to you. You get false conspiracies dumped onto you. You get false claims. You get one fallacy after another trying to justify like hating another group, when it's like, meanwhile, it's like, read the book. It says to love everybody. Yeah. I lost my train of thought again, but I'm bored.
Yeah, but I mean, your point is well made, right? Like, we can find. So you'd said like anybody is susceptible to this kind of stuff, and you're absolutely right. And this is one of the things that I try to point out with folks. Buying into extremist ideologies, being drawn into radicalized sort of spaces. This is a nonpartisan thing, right? It's just everyone can be sucked in. Everyone. And the second that you think that you're immune, congratulations. Like, you've just revealed yourself to be rather vulnerable to this. Mm-hmm. However, that being said, in today's sort of global context, there is no comparison when we look at acts of violence and sort of action, antisocial, negative action associated with these beliefs. There is the political right engages in this kind of violence, or in orders of magnitude greater amounts than the left does. And that's every single survey, every single study, every single analysis that we've looked at, even like testimony from social media admin and like, you know, everything we look at tells us exactly the same thing. And part of the reason for that is because ideology, fine, that's what you believe. But when you wed ideology to action, right, you have to decide as a movement. The movement will take time, right, during its sort of coalescence phase. It'll take time to decide what its repertoires of contention are. In other words, what are the tools in its toolkit? How's it going to change the world? Since the 1960s, the political left has largely abandoned violence as a legitimate tool. Some groups have maintained, but they are isolated on the left, and they tend to be pariahs among sort of broader left-wing movements. The right has increasingly, since the 1980s and 90s, has increasingly begun to embrace violence as a legitimate tool in their toolkit. And so they see stochastic terrorism, valid. Dehumanizing, valid. Lying, all kinds of antisocial behavior, valid. And violence. We're already seeing now Proud Boys and other groups on the right straight up saying, if Trump gets if Trump goes to trial on these felony charges, we're going to war. And they're not talking rhetorically. So
no, we've already seen that with January 6th.
Yeah,
they've already proven them to be violent, and
that was a dry run. If Trump gets convicted, yeah, it's going to be rough.
I don't know. I don't know about that, because it seems to me that, you know, when he called for action the last time, which is not too long ago, nothing happened. Nobody even showed up. I think you know, I think his varnish, I think, is peeling off, and people are saying, you know, this might not be worth doing.
Or it might be worse. It might be they're pitching at someone like DeSantis, who is playing the long game and is a lot smarter and knows how to work the law, you know, and just shifting the focus, like maybe going this extreme isn't working so much anymore. We need to do the more subtle approach.
Meanwhile, you have like MAGA showing up at DeSantis events, yelling and screaming at him like support Trump or
it's a hodgepodge of weird in this space, because like you're only adopting an ideology that fits you're not being skeptical about it. Like, this feels right, so this is where I go. And then, oh, you know what? This person disappointed me. This person's saying something I like. I'll go over here. You know, there's no skepticism involved. It's just being like going where the wind blows and feeling where I'm powerful, and I can demonize somebody else so I can feel. And also the social aspect of belonging to a group. The group you happen to belong to is terrible.
Well, and the United States right now is caught. I think I mentioned this last time. The United States is caught in successive moral panics.
We're always, trans people are gonna break down society and drag queens. Apparently,
trans people, drag queens, critical race studies, teachers, immigrants at the border,
moral panics.
It's the whole, like, these moral panics. It's just reverberating through U.S. society right now, and I mean, regardless of the validity of the belief itself, like, it's galvanized. It's galvanized people. I mean, you've got like folks are at every level of American society, from the municipal all the way up to the federal, either passing or attempting to pass draconian legislation designed explicitly to strip people of rights and to terrify them into silence. And that's not like, that's before we even start talking about like people so outraged about drag shows that they're willing to shoot up power stations. Yeah. Like, it's
and then when you say like, hey, this is fascism, they're like, oh, you're being extreme. I'm like, have you looked at world history and like Italy and Russia and, you know, Germany during the mid 20th century? Did you happen to look at that?
Since
World War I? Did you?
Yeah, it's so interesting reading Hitler's speeches from his, like, with the German rise to power, and it's like just a carbon copy of the populist rhetoric that you hear nowadays. Just replace people in the theater with Hollywood. Replace the newspapers with the alt-right media or alt-left media. Or fake news media, and it's just all the same tropes over and over again, and people fall for it, and it works, unfortunately.
It's fascism isn't a magic spell. It's not like it's not some supernatural thing, but the sort of this kind of liberal discourse over the last 80 years has pretty successfully stripped fascism of its history, so that we see fascism as 1945. We don't see fascism as like the 1920s and 1930s Italy, and so we don't remember that like Hitler was a joke until he wasn't, right? And Mussolini was considered like just a daft, like out of touch weirdo until he wasn't, and so this idea that fascism just like springs fully formed, right? Like Athena bursting out and there it is. That is the most brilliant rhetorical cover for the kind of creeping fascism that actually happens.
Professor Hodge, thank you so much for being on the show with us today. Really appreciate that. It's always a pleasure to have you on. If people want to find out more about what you do in your studies at UVic and all that, where can they find you?
Find me all over the place. They can find me at UVic. I'm publicly I'm up everywhere. They can find me on Twitch. I stream on Sundays at the Sociocalypse, and I have hobbies. I write indie novels at Smashwords.
Cool. Professor Hodge, as usual, I gotta have you say hi. This is Hi, this is Professor Edwin Hodge, and I took a left in the valley.
Hi, this is Professor Edwin Hodge, and I took a left at the valley.